Good morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. Who could complain on a day like today? Not me. I can't do it. Things are going great. Folks in the chat already chatting. How you doing, Johnny Midas? Coming at us from Palm Springs, California. We love Palm Springs, California. Hope everything's going great there. We love Johnny Midas. We got a lot of folks in our incredible Rumble chat going on. John C919 from Colorado Springs, Palm Springs, and Colorado Springs. We got lots of springs. It's not quite spring, but we got people from Springs. I like Saratoga Springs. I go there for water. This episode should be good. Lance 2002, I will not disappoint. This episode will be great. T-Dog, yo, yo, yo. Good morning, gang. Chef Zero, brilliant morning, Bampians, living at the speed of Bitcoin. What a great speed it is. Third to like, MMK007, feeling blessed. Sun is up in Florida. Bitcoin's running here too. Coffee's also hot. Man, I'm so spoiled. Good morning. We love it, MMK007. Remember, you're winning World War III in a much more comfortable position than the people who had to win World War I and II, right? You got a son, you got some Bitcoin, and you got your coffee. You're like literally a belligerent in the war. That's what fighting World War III is all about. There you go. Jack2K says, good morning, and Nolan and Great Awakening crew. Happy Tuesday. Here's my latest 4K video walking through Terminal 1 at O'Hare, the Chicago airport. It's there on Rumble. Have a look. The Neon Tunnel. Seaberger, greetings and salutations from the cold state of Pennsylvania. We love Pennsylvania. Good morning, crew. The sun is hiding behind clouds. A little nervous, but seems operational. Jesus is king. You stay on the lookout. We got to make sure we got that sun. We'll have to end the show early if it's not there, of course. Duck countdown to duck count. 3, 2, 1. Showtime awakens. Woohoo! Young Tommy's in the house. Wow. Good morning, gang. Coffee operational 2, says another frog. Jick 2K. I like your doors open behind you to see the greenery. The greenery is great indeed. We've got a little, I guess we got a breadfruit tree back there. There's a mango tree. The one right up here is a mango tree. We got breadfruit back here. We got a passion fruit over here somewhere. There's a couple lemon and lime trees around. Kids are out there. You might see them running around today. Winning MMK007 says, Bitcoin Deb, morning, Nolan and gang, 68K today. Coffee operators unite indeed. As everyone has reiterated, we got a major sunrise and Bitcoin's running 68,000 US trash tokens to get yourself a Bitcoin. Isn't it grand? Isn't it grand? 68 grand for a Bitcoin. What a deal. What a steal. Indeed, your progeny one day will look back and they'll say, you could actually buy Bitcoin with 68,000 trash tokens? And they'll be like, what? Tell me again, Daddy. Tell me again. That's what's going on. All right, folks, let's have a coffee and talk about what is new. I actually did not go onto the internet to get the fake news today. I was able to catch enough of it just on X. So we're just going to do it. Let me get the order correct, though, because there's some really good ones here. Before I get to what we got. We'll go that way. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I got to put them in a bit of an order. There we go. There we go. I'm going to move this one back. Excellent. Okay, here we go, everyone. Some really good ones today. Really top quality stuff. All right, first up from USA Today. Hold on, I screwed that up again. Why can't I ever get this right? Stop sharing. And now I'm going to share here. Here we go. And this should be correct. And it goes this way. And this is what we got, guys. Opinion. This is from USA Today. You could say Elon Musk thinks white people are super. So what I love here, first of all, is what USA Today opinion writer is able to glean from Elon Musk's mind. You know, it's just great that USA Today knows what Elon Musk is thinking. You know, you'd think if you were a writer for the USA Today, not a bad job. You know, I don't want to put anything down on USA Today. It's fine, right? You know, if you're an opinion writer for USA Today, pretty good. You know, pretty good. But what I don't understand is if you know what Elon Musk is thinking, why you wouldn't just build your own rocket company and your own car company and your own mission to Mars and the moon and your own satellite company and your own internet company and your own hole digging company and your own robot company. Like, why, you know, it's just old fashioned mysteries, right? You know, like if I could mind read Elon Musk, I'd say, well, I've got some ideas. But you do you. It's okay. But let's continue. Let's finish. After the mind reading, you could say Elon Musk thinks white people are super, maybe even supreme. It's almost as if he supports some kind of white supremacy. That's a real article, guys. This was really written in USA Today. Oh, shit. We got more, though. It's not the end. We get this from Forbes. Colbert says CBS refused to air his interview with Democrat candidate, fearing FCC blowback. Oh, democracy, free speech. Now, the way out of this for Colbert would be to simply put a Republican candidate on. But no, that would be dumb. Then he wouldn't be able to do this and complain about censorship. Come on, keep up. Forbes, really happy about not adding his get out of jail card free here. Very good. Doing a lot of work. The amount of work that the refused here, right? The amount of work they've got refused doing in this sentence is perfect. We get this from Mamdani, right? Look what's happening. Zoran Mamdani's rental ripoff hearings, right, will ban New York City Housing Authority tenant complaints. So if the complaints are about him being the slumlord, no good. Come on, think about what it would do to the whole socialist takeover of New York. You can't have the mayor getting criticized by tenants. Gross. We get this. So a lot of people laughing at AOC over the past couple days. You know, I didn't do that. I didn't say she was stupid, right? I said she looked great on stage and did her best. And, you know, lots of people thought she did great. But because some people are complaining, right, this is what we found out. She ran to Kellen Browning. So this is a totally normal interaction, everyone. This is just totally what everybody does, okay? If the New York Times runs a bunch of stories about you and they're not good, or other news does a bunch of stories about you that are not good, this is what always happens. You just go to the New York Times, right? AOC came to Munich to warn about the far right. Coverage focused on 2028 and verbal missteps. She gave me a call. And here's what we know. Everyone's got this story wrong. This isn't about me running for president, she said. Global democracies are on fire the world over. The New York Times, right? After a trip to Germany, AOC expresses frustrations. Indeed, she's frustrated, everyone. She has frustrations. So now we know. That's not the all of it. We get this from the New York Times as well. No, this is from Bloomberg. We get this from Bloomberg, right? So Bloomberg writing, Republican commentators back home declared her unprepared for prime time for what they called a flubbed answer to a question of Bloomberg's Francine Lacqua on whether the U.S. could come to Taiwan's defense in China if attacked. Normally quick to respond, Ocasio-Cortez was at a loss for words, saying this is such a, I think that this is, of course, this is a very long-standing policy of the United States, she said, but she recovered with a cogent response. The U.S. should avoid any such confrontation and for that question to even arise, she said. Ocasio-Cortez hesitated because she wanted to be careful, guys. She wanted to be careful about what she was saying, Matt Duss, who advises Ocasio-Cortez on foreign policy, said in an interview. I wish more, don't you just wish more politicians would wait for the answer instead of rattling off talking points? Guys, she was doing what other politicians should do. Everyone should be like that. Okay, if you don't want to answer the question and you want to give it a bit of time, it's okay to go, I think it's that, it's very, that's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't talk about that, right? Oh, now a lot of people, obviously, right? We've been hearing about this for a while. All the people upset about the Epstein stuff, right? You're hearing it on X, everyone going on. I can't believe that sadistic, Baphomet praising cabal of Satanists and pedal bikers run the world. Everyone's upset about it, right? You go on Twitter. I got to turn Twitter off sometimes these days because I get on there and everyone's going on about it. Well, it's not just people on Twitter. Look at this. The UN, right? The UN with their old spokesperson, Ghislaine, here, right? They're upset about it too. It's not just you. This is what the UN special procedures have said. Epstein files, no one is too wealthy or too powerful to be above the law. UN experts concerned that flawed Epstein files disclosures undermine accountability for crimes against women and girls. The files have shocked the conscience of humanity and raised terrifying implications of the level of impunity for such crimes, right? Just look. Look, it's crazy. It's not just the UN, though. There's more. The Atlantic is big upset about it. Here's what we get from The Atlantic. The Epstein files reveal that plenty of powerful people tolerated or participated in disgusting, shameful, and even criminal behavior. But they also bolster the case that there was never any grand conspiracy. This is real. People really wrote this recently, this week. Too good. Thank you, God of the simulation, for providing us with these pictures and these headlines. I always worry that I'm going to run out of NPC News headlines, and then things happen, and it just comes, right? There must be somewhere in there where Jesus, he warns us not to worry. All things must come to pass. Somewhere in there, there's a message about being worried about the end of NPC News supply, just because people like Brian Stelter get fired, or MSNBC cuts budget and fires people like Joy Reid, and just because CNN is trying to play it straight and all these things, and then Washington Post fires everybody, and I haven't seen Phil Bump other than that one day in the last couple of years. All of this happens, but the Lord will provide, everyone. There's a lesson in there for all of us. Indeed. Let me have one more sip of coffee, and then we're going to talk more about what is going on with the not NPC News, the other news. What are folks saying, right? Charlosky, morning, y'all. Nolan, have you shot down any kites yet? It's been amazing this year. We've been really lucky. I've only heard about 2 kites all year. 3, I had one yesterday. But there you go. Turning to head to Pennsylvania for my parents' 60th anniversary, but more damn white stuff coming. I heard. We had thunderstorms so loud it knocked out the electricity. Was intensely loud. I was missing electricity yesterday for a while. It was a holiday, so lots of things going on around here on holidays. Chef Zero, we're going to be talking about the price of gas in California today, so we'll get to that later. Jack 2K USA Today, that's clearly a top-notch story, Nolan. He's clearly into white supreme. I see the light. I see it. Elon also built a personal use flamethrower. Evidently, his lawyers put the kibosh on that one. But, now that we can read his mind, it's fine. Someone else could do it. What else do we got? JJ Fox would say that California, we're going to get to the gas one. AOC's so ladylike and sophisticated. Every time I see the word cogent, I think of Morning Joe's description of Biden. Cogent. That's true. Escape the Matrix. Chatelet, by the way. The party they gave us, Biden and Kamala, says AOC is unprepared for prime time. Sheesh. JJ Fox, she doesn't strike me as a girl who doesn't know what to do with her mouth. She's a professional blatherer. And not so brilliant after all. She sounds like a waitress, generally nice, but no, nothing person. But I will say, in her defense, and when I ran in politics, I will say that my best experience for running in politics was working in restaurants and cafes and bars, much more irrelevant than going to law school or college or whatever else I did. Simply because working in restaurants is a place where everyone's your customer. You got to treat everyone well. And I think if you work in politics, ideally, that's how you do it. So I was a pretty good retail politician when I was running for office in my youth. I was a young guy doing it, so it was a little easier. And I was only a few years removed from the service industry. But the service industry teaches you, I think, incredible amount of skills. I mean, the amount of things you got to keep in your head, the order of doing things. It is actually a high functioning job. I don't care what anyone says. So I never use that as an indictment of AOC. Plenty of other things to complain about when it comes to her, but the waitress thing doesn't stick to me. I don't think the waitress thing makes any sense. From my own personal experience, like I said, I legitimately believe that my experience in politics was when it was successful, and I was successful at the retail part of it. I was successful at the interactions, and I did not win, but I was still good at the job. As you might imagine, right? Just going around chatting with people in my hometown, it's not so hard for me. And so the restaurant business was the best preparation for that. So there you go. There you go. So I don't really bother with the waitress things on AOC. Okay, so but I put these things at the end of NPC News, the Atlantic and the UN with their "Did you see the Epstein stuff?" All these crazy stories. I put them all at the end because they do speak to what I've been saying from the very beginning of these Epstein files, that the whole thing about them not being afraid of being caught and the sort of infrastructure around Epstein, all of his connections, everything he was touching, and then they could write this stuff in emails and not get caught. Since the first time we talked about it when I was in Dubai, when all of these files came out, I've been saying that is the most amazing part of the story. And we had a really great example of it yesterday. So Hillary back in the news, we're going to talk about her back in the news, but she does this BBC interview yesterday. And so she comes out and discusses her and Bill Clinton and the links to Epstein. And the reporter says, "Do you regret the links there have been?" And she actually says, "There have been no links." There's no links. It's just fine, right? She actually said there were no links. Now, that right there, Hillary Clinton sitting in a BBC interview saying there are no links and no follow-ups, no pressing the issue, no embarrassment for her. Just, that's my answer, even though it reminds us of the old communists saying they know we're lying. They know we know they're lying. They know that we know they're lying, and blah, blah, blah. And that was really the whole thing, that the infrastructure above it was so unassailable that she can just go on BBC and straight up say, nah, it's nothing there, guys. It's nothing. Like, I got nothing to do with Epstein. And she can walk out of that interview after, and it's fine. Now, I did a lot of TV interviews back in the old days when I lived in New York. And because I was in early Bitcoin, it was highly adversarial, right? I had to really be on my toes. I did it at a time when Joe Kernan was anti-Bitcoin, when Mr. Wonderful Kevin O'Leary was not that into Bitcoin. So I went in there with each of them basically saying, like, we're going to cook you during this interview. I mean, being really rude beforehand, because there's a bit of performance to it. So they want me to feel, they're hoping you kind of crash or do well. They were always happy that I did well and didn't crash. So I don't want to make it sound like they were trying to get me or anything like that. They were trying to create television. And so Joe Kernan would say rude things to me when we were off camera. And it's all just normal locker room stuff. It's not, and I don't mean locker room like the way Trump defended himself with the locker room talk. I mean just locker room in the sense that when the camera's not rolling, they want to put scenarios up, and by doing well, they always said, "Wow, you did great." You know, when it was over and I didn't bomb and I defended my position and I made my talking points and I delivered them the way I had intended and the way I wanted, that's why they invite you back, right? Because you don't melt like a baby and you say what you have to say, and you are adversarial and confrontational because that's the kind of content they want. But that's nothing like the kind of ride Hillary's given, obviously, right? So um, she's not being treated the same way I was, and I again don't have no. I think that's a totally normal way, the way I was treated, especially with early Bitcoin. It's they don't have to know what's going on with early Bitcoin, and they're allowed to be skeptical. And as Bitcoiners, we should always be prepared for adversarial conversations, people who don't get it. It's a totally normal thing for us. So I'm not trying to be a victim or complaining. What I'm trying to observe here and make the contrast is that they know how to do this and they choose not to when someone like Hillary comes, and that's an important observation that I can say firsthand. Because here people are really starting to talk about this whole aspect, right? The empire above Epstein. Here's Kevork Almasayan, who wrote this over the weekend. It's got a tremendous amount of reads to it. It's almost at 1 million now. Lots of people commenting. And here's Tamara Litch, the lady who is waiting for her sentencing. She's the head of the truckers protest in Canada. She says, "You begin to suspect that what we call democracy might be more like a stage, a circus of competing politicians who look like leaders but function in reality as employees of a system they do not control. And then when you arrive at the most dangerous question of all, the question nobody wants citizens to ask too loudly, if the real power lies above the democratic stage in darkness, in networks that can feed money, push ideas, and mobilize bureaucracy to implement them, then we do really live in democracies. Then do we really live in democracies, or do we live inside managed democracies where freedom is mostly a feeling and choice is mostly a performance?" And so, as you all know, I've been writing these whiteboards for a very long time, and that's kind of what I try to get at in these whiteboards. I've been trying to always describe that functionality, what's above the politicians, and that's why when I write them this way, right, the I being above, here's the institutions. This can be a bank, this could be a parliament, a Congress, any democratic body. That's why I've got the Greco-Roman building below it, right? I put the oil drop there just because it made it look like a tier, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the way you do it. As you know, I've got many of these styled models here. Same thing here, right? Here's the just added the layer of people onto the bottom here, but this is more or less what that article on Epstein is talking about, and it's more or less what we're perceiving. There is something, and in this case, I put money and incentives, the subconscious incentives that move people in all of these directions. So we're starting to have a better sense of this empire of above Epstein and banking dynasties and tech elites and military and industrial complex and what it all means. And people acknowledged here with this scene in Eyes Wide Shut exactly this phenomena. Here's Tom Cruise having his second meeting with this fellow you'll see in a second. So this was someone Tom Cruise knew from before he ended up in these parties, and he's going to meet him into the party, and he's got some questions for him. And it's the billiard table scene. And this scene, according to this guy, Champagne Josh, really does describe what is going on over there. It operates as Stanley Kubrick's quiet thesis statement on power. Elites do not need to hide their existence once you understand how consequences are controlled. The visual staging reinforces the message. The glowing red billiards table evokes both the ritual imagery earlier in the film and the idea of a controlled playing field. Ziegler stands at the table holding a cue but never actually playing, suggesting authority without effort. Bill, by contrast, is positioned as someone who has unknowingly wandered into a game already in progress. The conversation is less a confession than a demonstration. Ziegler explains just enough to show Bill how the system works, while subtly reminding him that resistance would be futile. The tone, pacing, and controlled calm of the delivery suggests something more unsettling. The truth is not being denied, it is being managed. Kubrick frames the exchange like a corporate briefing, implying that power structures maintain stability not through secrecy alone, but through quiet intimidation and selective disclosure. In that sense, the billiards room is the film's real climax. Not the climax that Kubrick had intended before he was murdered. Of course, if you don't know, the apparent climax of the film is that the cost of all of this to Tom Cruise is that his own child has to be offered up to these people. But that's just a rumor. Bill has glimpsed the machinery behind wealth, privilege, and consequence, and the final message is unmistakable. The world he thought he understood operates according to a different set of rules, and now that he has seen them, the only real choice left is silence. What makes the scene linger is the uncomfortable possibility that Kubrick wasn't simply telling a fictional story. The exchange hints at a broader reality that we intuit, but most of us prefer not to acknowledge. And so, seeing that idea of this unseen empire of all of that exists above Epstein is why I've been saying for a long time that that's why I've been saying for a long time that the infrastructure of Epstein, that Epstein himself is infrastructure. And so here you can see Sayer G, this guy's done a look through all of it, calling it exactly what I called it. This is exactly what I called it on day one. Mike Benz has been calling it this as well, saying, I've spent weeks inside the Epstein files, not looking for names, but for infrastructure. What I found, Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just a trafficker. He was a switchboard, routing government secrets, Wall Street intelligence, and political power through one network. The same network that built the censorship machine that targeted your speech during COVID. 5 parts, all sourced to DOJ documents. Here's the whole investigation. Part 1, the DOJ released thousands of pages of Epstein files. Buried inside them is a 20-year financial architecture designed to turn pandemics into a profit center. So you can go through all of this. It's a really great take. Project Molecule, all about the turn biology into investable infrastructure. Part 3, the censorship machine that decided what Americans could say during COVID was built by Epstein, connected British political operatives in a room above a pub in Brixton. Peter Mandelson routed UK Treasury intelligence to Epstein within minutes of receiving it. His protege, Morgan McSweeney, co-founded CCDH, the organization that gave Twitter its disinformation dozen list. Same office, same staff, same dark money. Obama, Gates, Epstein, Ebola. Part 5, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says none of us knew about Epstein's British connections. The documents say otherwise. Lots of people knew. 5 parts, 1 pattern. Epstein built the financial architecture, parts 1 and 2. The same network built the censorship architecture, part 3. Crisis events activated, part 4. The government covered it up, part 5. Infrastructure, not names. Systems, not scandals. The series has reached millions of readers. If you're reading for the first time, now you know why. Every document has a file number. Every quote is verbatim. Every claim is independently verifiable. So we're seeing it as infrastructure, and it's important to see it as infrastructure because the infrastructure around the persuasion, the infrastructure around the order, the psychological engine that comes with this structure and order, again, looks like this. And it's why I built these top-down models. It's why I built all of the institutions, the New York Times and the Checkmark. And remember, this is I wrote this whiteboard for the first time in 2022. So 4 years ago, when around the same time, just judging by Toronto in the background, and when I stayed there, this would have been right around the time of the Sam Bankman-Fried crash and just around the time that Elon was buying Twitter. So that's why you see Twitter check marks there and why I had the Twitter check marks changing teams, if you will, on either side. So, but indeed, it is all about this persuasion and the direction of this persuasion and how incentives are ordered and why this stuff is happening in the direction it is. So here you have War Clandestine talking about all of this and how we're now in a full-on battle for public perception around the Epstein files, saying, after watching the Epstein saga unfold, I think I have it figured out. The Dems knew Trump was going to release the Epstein files, so they had to get out in front of it because they knew it leads to them, not Trump. Their only option was to, and I wouldn't say just Dems. So again, I believe all of these folks, like the former vice president of the United States, many former Republican presidents of the United States, part of the Uniparty and not Trump. So I still see this as Trump versus, or populism versus the Uniparty, and not so much Dems versus Trump. Their only option was to hijack the narrative and convince the public that Epstein was a Trump scandal, psychological projection. Their hope was that the public wouldn't actually read the files and just read mainstream media headlines, which ignored all Dem activity and tried to hint that it was all about Trump. And if given the choice, the Dems never would have brought up Epstein in the first place, hence why they said nothing over the last 20 years. But they knew Trump was going to release the files, so they had to muddy the water. The Dems only started talking about Epstein when they knew they couldn't stop the files from coming out. When Trump says that this was a hoax, that's what he's referring to, the Dems trying to make this a Trump scandal when it was a Democrat scandal from the beginning, Uniparty scandal from the beginning. Everyone in Washington already knew Epstein was a Democrat elite. That's true. And we have been watching the Dems desperately trying to maintain that little control they have left of public perception while Trump tries to break the mainstream media spell. We are witnessing a battle for public perception, care for a game of chess. Again, why I predicted from day one that Trump was using kayfabe style wrestling drama, the third act, sucking people into a story so that they would want an outcome, so that they would feel involved. Because a lot of the stuff you just simply can't tell people. It's too difficult to swallow, too difficult to perceive without being shown. And you can already see the spell is still there. This is Michelle Obama and Barack Obama the other day at the NBA All-Star game getting a round of applause. Hello George says America is still nowhere close to being awake. But remember, we are dealing with a chess game. We are dealing with pieces on the board moving. We are dealing with who I think is one of the greatest persuaders the world has ever seen and will ever see, which is Donald Trump, using kayfabe, using his own skills up against this entire architecture of deceit, this infrastructure, this Epstein infrastructure that we see. And so there, when you see Rep. Paulina Luna say the following, everyone in the country should be asking why the media bury the Epstein story only to turn around and try to weaponize it against Trump. There's a lot more to this story, and it will all come out soon. The Comeys are very dirty, and indeed, lots of people picking up on that. And Rep. Luna has been pretty close to all of this and a little bit ahead of the game on much of it. So indeed, here she is teeing up that, of course, there's more to come, which is why it was always called the greatest show on earth, which is why Trump's, from 2015 until now, has been called the greatest show on earth. Because it's all about cycling people into the storyline and sucking people into the narrative. So they start rooting for winners and losers and can actually change their mind through some of this stuff. And here you have Brett Weinstein saying exactly as we've been led to believe from a lot of folks over all this time. Do you know the scene in the movie where the dark force looms into view, its power unthinkable, humanity is outgunned, and there is nothing to do and nowhere to run? We are in that scene. Though we didn't realize it, we were training for this all of our lives. It's time, Brett Weinstein says. So it's time was a line that Scott Adams used very often. And he would say it's time and then regularly not even say time for what. Your mind sort of knows how to fill in the blanks, that we are, like I said, we have been placed in this 3-act movie framework. We have been so programmed to think in the terms of Hollywood, of the mainstream media, of legacy media, of 3-act plays. One of the reasons why you can't be told the truth, one of the reasons why Trump is engaged in this kayfabe style psychological war is in order to suck people into this. Like I said, you can't be told. So how do you create these circumstances that gets people motivated and involved? It's just as Brett Weinstein has perceived here. We're in a movie, and it's at that point now where we've been through this a million times, watching movies and understanding how narratives work, and of course understanding Elon's razor as well. The most entertaining outcome is the most likely. Just look at Trump himself modeling this kind of stuff. I mean, how many times did you think Trump was completely down and out? When they stole the 2020 election, and you saw Trump basically kicked out of DC without a hope in hell of coming back. It was already then that I could perceive his way back would be through a shifting politics, a shifting system, and a shifting financial incentive model, which is why populism and Bitcoin and don't trust verify and proof of work and all the memetics of Bitcoin would fit seamlessly into the Trump propaganda machine, because he's already speaking in memetics, he's already speaking in kayfabe, he's already speaking in things that aren't the sort of linguistic frame that the Democrats have found themselves locked into, because it is a psychological fight. It is a game where people are perceiving these differences and understanding these narratives. And it is the third act, and people have been training for all these years. And as Mike Jones says here, the techno populist. And that's really what it all comes down to. Techno populism is really Trump's cohort. Here saying one of the beautiful things about X is that the people are shown, not told. Remember, not told. Show, don't tell. They're not the same thing. Showing, people can learn. Telling doesn't work, right? One wrong word and the human mind will just stop listening and let the rest of it wash over their mind, like waves on a shore, right? That you don't really write it deep enough into the sand. One wave will just wash it away. If you're shown, then the waves can't wash it away. It's deeper. It's written deeper into the sand, and it's harder for the waves to wash this stuff away. So here he says, one of the beautiful things about X is that people are shown almost daily that the emperor has no clothes, that exposure forces a radical reevaluation of long-held assumptions. I cannot think of anything in modern life quite as effective. The only historical parallel that comes to mind is pamphleteering of Martin Luther in the 16th century, which is exactly why Bitcoin was created the same day as Martin Luther began the pamphleteering, October 31st. It's when he nailed the edicts onto the church door. It's when the white paper was published. And these memetics of doing and action and actually learning about this stuff have helped train people. Now, we've spent all this time on X together. Remember, Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer information environment as well. So it's kind of like when people first grok Bitcoin and understand it, you don't give up on Bitcoin. You don't stop understanding Bitcoin. It's very rare, in fact, that happens. Just like you don't forget any of these things that you've learned over the past couple of years, and all of this technique being shared between the pure network of Bitcoin, just as Brett Weinstein alluded to, have been preparing us for this moment. And so things like the Epstein files coming along, things like even seeing this, I mean, people recognize this for what it was right away yesterday. Here's Beyonce retweeting the Bad Bunny Super Bowl message. The only thing more powerful than hate is love. Majesty saying it's so crazy how we are all watching this in real time, but everyone is waking up to see how they've been doing this brainwashing technique on y'all for so long. This doesn't go backwards. It only goes forwards. The Beyonce crowd, the Obama crowd, they're not gaining anyone new. They're only losing. They're trying to stop the loss. They're trying to prevent people from learning more, but it's a one-way street. And people are seeing it more and more. I mean, just all these sightings of Obama and Hillary the past few days, many people commenting, Democrats are up to their old tricks. Whenever you see Obama out in public in a stage fashion, Hillary Clinton lecturing overseas, Beyonce coming out of the dark, Cardi B bashing ICE on stage, Grammys used as a political stage, they are all working in sync. It's called programming. Absolutely nothing is organic. It's all a psyop. And you see more of this. Gain of Fauci saying there's a reason why you are suddenly seeing Obama popping up everywhere right now. I promise you it's not a good reason. You're getting more and more people who can just so easily pick this stuff out without, whoops, I made a mistake there, without having to be told, right? So I want to get back to, I made a mistake. on the things you guys aren't seeing. The old windows. I closed down my infograph, which I might still want. So I got to bring it back up. And so it is a perception war, just as War Clandestine said. It is a war for hearts and minds and persuasion, and really to see which of these two stories ends up manifesting, which of these two narratives end up driving to their conclusion. And one of the problems that the sludge people have is that because they still exist in the fiat world, because they still exist in a world where fiat words, declarations are money, where the incentives, right? Fiat is government orders. Orders are given in human language, right? They're not given in other instructions, in another language or in mathematics or anything like that. They're offered up as sound bites. They're offered up as cliches. They're offered up as inspirational speeches, right? They exist on this linguistic frame. And so, it's not a coincidence, of course, that Obama's own presidential library has the wall of words, and a lot of people talking about this yesterday. I think this one had almost 1 million views. I'm outside the Obama Center Museum Tower right now. The new letters, an excerpt from Obama's Selma speech, are tough read to me, giving off the lorem ipsum vibes, right? And of course, we know Selma was also fake. So people are just seeing it more and more. Bitcoiners through the P2P network have created an amount of media literacy and financial literacy that is really powerful, right? And so here we see Tommy DOU saying, "Good morning, Nolan. Is it possible the Bitcoin spell has broken 5 years here and something feels off?" It's just that we're in the big leagues now, Tommy. There's always these feelings whenever you get into these bear markets, whenever you get into a place where the narratives break down and people are left sort of wondering what's next. The disinformation campaigns begin, and the what did I call it again the other day? We were doing one on it's not discouragement, but the opposite of optimism again. What was it called again? We had what's his name who did one. We did what was it called? Demoralization campaigns. Thank you. Demoralization campaigns. We were talking about demoralization campaigns. And so demoralization campaigns being a part of this, whenever those things begin, it's often because we are on target. And it often is because Bitcoin is about to emerge out of these broken systems. And even here, right, you can see the Ray Dalio thing that everyone was talking about yesterday, right? Ray Dalio came out and said, the world is on the brink. The world is on the brink, right? Look at how Bitcoiners handle this, because the amount of financial literacy and media literacy and energy literacy that Bitcoiners are able to share amongst their peer group. Look at the kind of cognitive security we have as we go through these moments, right? We see here Stephen Lupka saying, when the world order is collapsing, you should buy Salesforce because in the collapse, there will be massive demand for CRMs. He updated his portfolio. All he did was buy like American stocks. It's all different American companies. Lots of people picking up on America's ending. I'm going to buy a shit ton of NVIDIA, Salesforce, and Adobe. So lots of people picking up on his failures and that it's an op, right? Here's Adam Townsend. What cycle of civilizational decline is Ray Dalio? Let's not forget. Here's Adam Townsend, a great Bitcoiner, picking up. Not sure why Ray Dalio deleted this tweet and why he made private the YouTube video of his intimate chat with P. Diddy. Whatever, internet is still forever. Here he is, right? Sean Diddy Combs is a hero of mine. So lots of people picking up on it. And indeed, here's High Yield Harry saying, life after realizing Ray Dalio is an idiot. The wildly disproportionate number of boomers got rich by pure happenstance, then used that blind luck to convince the public they're some kind of generational wise man. In reality, they were dopey doofuses merely in the right place at the right time. rode a world historic U.S. economic bubble from 1980 to 2008, where practically every asset class magically appreciated 25% year after year for decades. Then caught a second win of dumb luck over the last decade on the back of historic money printing. Many are, frankly, astonishingly ignorant imbeciles about pretty much everything. And their astonishing ignorance is why we now find our degraded country mired in the smoking wreckage of such unbelievably dire circumstances. And indeed, the whole, him creating this, maybe he believes it, it doesn't really matter. Many people underlining that he's beholden to Chinese forces, but and it was Kevin Bass who's been saying that, one of the earliest Bitcoiners I know. So Bitcoiners out here definitely using the P2P information network in order to buttress and support that cognitive security, because it is a financial and psychological war that we're in. And so, what you can see from this financial and psychological war, the demoralization campaigns and all that stuff, what's important to realize is that this linguistic arguing, these boomer philosophies, the boomers trying to be the wise men, even though they don't really know what's happening in the world. All of that is up against Trump and Bitcoin and a move in our system, which is now less talking and more action. The fiat world of hypnotizing through words and using these different bromides, these different cliches, diversity is our strength, and all this stuff. All of the weakness of those systems and the weakness of the spell, just like you say in this comment, the spell has broken. I would say the spell of the fiat world using these words in order to hypnotize people, in order to get a standing ovation at the NBA All-Star game, all of that is what's weakening. And what's strengthening is the Bitcoiners' proof of work meme, the ability to actually do things and change the world, the ability of Bitcoiners to remain optimistic and to have the psychology that doesn't fall for the boomer doomer stuff that we're getting from Ray Dalio, and realizing, right, there's other boomers out there, and that actually building stuff is important. So Susan Kokinda came out with a great talk yesterday, another one. Not all boomers suck. I've always said boomers are great teachers, and Susan Kokinda gives off great teaching vibes. I was taught primarily by boomers, of course, given my age as at the old end of the millennial curve. Didn't have many Gen X. Gen X was more older brothers to me, not teachers. They were not really around by then. I had a few by the end, and boy, did I take advantage of my high school Gen X teachers. We could run laps around those guys and gals, mostly girls, actually. But I grew up with a lot of male boomer teachers and was probably one of the last generations in America to have that. You had to be at the very tip. I'm at the border between the Gen X and millennials. So luckily educated mostly by boomers, people like Susan Kokinda, and that was, whatever there was for P2P information environments before full saturation by the fiat sludge people, it was in the boomer relationships that we could have had. Lots of great Gen Xers too, not trying to put down Gen Xers. Of course, lots of Gen Xers understood markets very well, risk, and have equipped us with the financial literacy to be able to participate in this economic end of the war. Of course, boomers grew up in a highly financialized world and do bring financial literacy at rates that most boomers never achieved, because they grew up in a much easier time when you could just get a job and all that stuff. They didn't have to go out onto the risk curve like Gen Xers did in order to be successful. So we learned a lot from those folks. And here you get Susan Kokinda talking a little bit about the Rubio speech over in Munich, and says Rubio just confirmed what they've hidden for 50 years. Deindustrialization was deliberate. And so here, that's why it's so important that we're now getting into a world where Bitcoin can actually produce things. The incentives actually change. We actually have, with Bitcoin, a mechanism. And that's where I believe the next narrative is headed. The next narrative is headed towards the whole Bitcoin citadel world. It's headed towards energy finance. It's headed towards Bitcoin at the heart of the energy markets. We're going to separate the economy into sludge people, fiat world, and real economics around energy. And so it's bimetallism, it's whatever you want to call it. It's a tapering of the fiat Ponzi. It is a gentle way of dealing with the sludge people to try to make them hard. It is what happens when hard money runs through soft people. This is what it looks like. And so not everyone in the sludge people can harden enough in order for them to be able to catch hard money and use it to shape the future. Many of them are just going to get completely blasted and run over by it. And we're seeing a lot of that, but it doesn't matter anymore because the brakes that you would want to put on that system are linguistic and can only be linguistic. Hold on, I got to plug my laptop in. This mic takes up so much power. It always surprises me. The battery on my laptop is quite good normally and would be able to normally have me doing the show for several hours, but there we go. Oh, what's going on here? Get in there. Back. There we go. So here's Susan Kokinda talking about the deliberate deindustrialization that happened, perhaps by this empire that you see, the infrastructure that you see around Epstein. This is the kind of infrastructure in this hidden world using fiat spell magic that was used in order to to promote this controlled disintegration here. But of course, Trumponomics are rebuilding economic sovereignty, and it's the American system against this. So go back to what Rep. Luna said and the entire drip, drip, drip narrative and the battle for hearts and minds and the play, the movie that people are getting sucked into, the idea that you heard from Weinstein as well, that it is time, the Scott Adams note, it is time, right? And no definitions about what time it is, but people understand when they hear, because we've been trained on these movies, it is time. And so you can see that, one of the interesting omissions from the Epstein files so far, of course, a lot of people picked up on this yesterday, are the 9/11 documents. Chris Martenson saying it's just a complete coincidence that the DOJ has completely withheld all the Epstein documents related to before, during, and after 9/11, right? Not a coincidence at all. I think you're hearing what Rep. Luna is even talking about. You're hearing about the orchestration and the greatest show on earth, the greatest story ever told. What you're seeing happen over the last 10 years, what you're seeing since Bitcoin came into the world, you're seeing a complete and total reprogramming of the financial system, a reprogramming of the narrative we tell ourselves about ourselves, a reprogramming of American governance systems, of incentives, of orientations, Trump completely altering how stories are passed, right? Trump, of course, heavily involved in memetics, heavily relying on this really condensed form of information passage of P2P networks using memetics in order to persuade and frame things and use counter arguments. And of course, you see the limitations of fiat. Fiat needs these words. It needs strings of words together, and people have to hear the words, and then the words have to be propagated. And if none of that happens, the whole consensus mechanism around what we call the World War II consensus breaks down. Reality is the World War II consensus, and it breaks down. And now I believe we are about to enter the 9/11 portion of the video game, of the movie, where we're finding out more and more. Of course, who could forget the picture of George Bush Jr. sitting on the Oval Office floor with his paper airplane and the two towers fallen down? We've already got a hint in it that Epstein knows what's going on with 9/11, and that's why all of these notes are there. Now, a lot of people picking up on it. Here, Red Pill Bot saying the following: whatever is going to happen, this is, of course, the famous story of William Cooper, the author of Behold a Pale Horse. Whatever is going to happen, remember he did this months before, right? Whatever is going to happen, they're going to blame it on Osama bin Laden. Don't you even believe it? You know, and I'm someone who read The Looming Tower. I've known about bin Laden's family for a long time. A lot of great people in bin Laden's family. Never forget that, right? Now, bin Laden himself, I don't know enough. If you believe The Looming Tower and what happens in that book, you can understand there was a way for him to have done 9/11 in his own way. Some of the story holds. But you get a better sense when you read the book of exactly what the bin Laden family was. It's not monochromatic. It's not this evil thing that hated America. It was something heavily plugged into Saudi systems for good and bad, for good purposes and bad purposes. And like any huge family, right? He had 20 something boys. It's not that simple. So William Cooper goes on here that he predicted 9/11 almost 11 weeks before it actually happened. He says, if this doesn't materialize in the next 2 or 3 weeks, it will eventually materialize because they haven't succeeded in taking our freedoms away. In fact, there's been a great awakening in this country, that is gaining momentum. And so I can tell you with certainty, they must do something terrible in order to stop this backlash. Cooper was fatally shot by undercover police outside his home 4 months after his broadcast. So, first of all, just look at how far we've come since he was killed in 2021. We saw already that the folks around the January 6th thing, the Proud Boys, they were goaded into one of these things where they could get shot by FBI agents. So we know that that happens. Fake assassinations can happen as some form of police intervention. We've seen that we have documented proof of that. And if you ask Cernovich, if you ask anyone from the Proud Boys, they'll tell you that's exactly what happened. Luckily, they knew it and didn't go out with it. But just look what he's talking about here, the amount of awakening that was going on. He wrote that in 2021. Look at how far we've come today. Look at how far we've come in our perceptions of these things and our understanding of the unseen hand, in our understanding of this empire above Epstein. And we've been able to do that using our P2P network, using memetics, using our own communications channels. And again, the American mind, so much fiat leverage was spent on 9/11. So much mythology came out of it, so much identity, so much of a saturation of politics and debate and everything, that it becomes a critical moment in American history, of course. And when you take what 9/11 actually was and you analyze it and you realize we're in a movie and that was a form of persuasion, and the results and who benefited from it, you can start to understand the incentives of the Patriot Act and the spying and everything you saw from Epstein's infrastructure, the censorship and all of these things. You started to understand that this 9/11, which has to be just like the assassination of Kennedy, has to be a part of the awakening, because we've got to run everything back. We've got to reinterpret our entire history that we had since the World War II consensus was formed, since the fiat communications systems really started to saturate our minds in the Hollywood 3-act play. Remember, Hollywood itself, I've told you this many times, right? Hollywood itself, the truth is right there, and people like Bill Cooper here understood, right? You know, the idea of people not understanding when you tell them and need to be shown is a principle of Hollywood. And Hollywood, even the word itself, Hollywood, comes from the ancient Druidic baton, the wand, the wand of a wizard, right? The wand of a wizard was made of holly. Remember, even the Harry Potter, right? Harry Potter is, what's his wand made of? Holly and, I don't know, dragon tail or something like that. But holly was made of holly wood. And so when you wonder where the wand, where it still exists in our culture, it's the conductor's baton, right? The conductor from European orchestras. The conductor is one of the last signs of the pre-Christian history of Europe. It's from the Druidic faith. It's from all those Celtic people, that what they practiced before. The baton was to get them to dance. It was to get them to move. It was get them to orchestrate and play and hit their notes. And so you still see what the baton is. Most of the other parts of the wizard's wand are hidden. But again, Hollywood is named after a wand of a wizard and a conductor's baton. And so it's storytelling, it's magic, right? We call it magic for a reason. It's magic. And so Hollywood magic, movie magic, right? And so that whole movie magic thing that was deployed for 9/11, the intense saturation of the American mind that came about because of this, um, can't be underestimated because physics still apply, right? We still have a Newtonian relationship with these things. And their reinterpretation, because it was so saturated, because it was so clearly defining of the American experience, if it's reinterpreted, it will have just as much of an effect. And so here is another quote, and this comes from Hunter S. Thompson, speaking of characters and folks who come from this world of mockingbirds and movies, right? Here's Hunter S. Thompson saying, he wrote this a week after 9/11, and I think of it almost every single day. He says, "We are at war now," according to President Bush, and I take him at his word. He also says this war will last a very long time. Generals and military scholars will tell you that 8 or 10 years is actually not such a long time in the span of human history, which is no doubt true. But history also tells us that 8 years or 10 years of martial law and wartime economy are going to feel like a lifetime to people who are in their 20s today. The poor bastards of what will forever be known as Generation Z are doomed to be the first generation of Americans who will grow up with a lower standard of living than their parents enjoyed. That is extremely heavy news and will take a while for it to sink in. The 22 babies born in New York City while the World Trade Center burned will never know what they missed. The last half of the 20th century will seem like a wild party for rich kids compared to what's coming now. The party's over, folks. Bitcoiners have understood this intimately. This is exactly what we know. This is our experience. And Hunter S. Thompson, again, why predictions are important in this game and why we do predictions here all the time. If you make a prediction and you get it right, your understanding of the world when you made the prediction was accurate. That builds the type of consistent credibility that is required in order to continue to tell these stories and traverse this time of change. And so Hunter S. Thompson predicted perfectly what we're seeing in the world today. We're much poorer. Our lived experience is nowhere near as good. I'm exactly the age of these people that he's talking about. And I got out of law school after this, right in time for the financial crisis. This is when I'm starting college, when 9/11 happens. And I get out of college after doing everything right. I go right into law school. I graduate in '08 in time for the financial crisis. And so luckily, it all worked out for me. I found Bitcoin not long after and used my position at the time to help promote Bitcoin and used that as a stepping stone to help build early Bitcoin media infrastructure in order to shape narratives around Bitcoin and use this narrative focus in order to help propagate the network and grow what it is we're doing. And it's important because everything now is moving back to this economic frame. Because this economic frame and 9/11 did end up really changing the economics of America. It led to the financial crisis. It led to everything we've experienced since. It's why, in a fiat world, the propaganda is their only weapon. It's word based money, word based propaganda. But Bitcoin can exist within these memetics. It can exist within these new incentives. It doesn't need to be spoken about. It can just form and create new incentives that will take away some of the controlled destruction that we heard about from Susan Kokinda and the whole globalist controlled destruction of the economy. So the way out of this, right, the way out and the way to fight back against the Epstein infrastructure, the hidden empire of Epstein, comes down to really simple economics. It's get rich. That's why I've been saying for a long time, getting rich and making money and understanding economics, understanding incentives, understanding these systems is the way to fight World War III. That's why we made a joke at the beginning of the show when MMK 007 said, I've got my coffee and life couldn't be better. Indeed, that makes you an actual combatant in World War III because it's a psychological and economic war. If you're not demoralized, If you know that Bitcoin is being manipulated, it is being manipulated 100%. It's always been manipulated, though. The problem is you don't manipulate it safely. No one can. I've seen people get burned in every cycle trying to manipulate it, and now we're just up against a bigger behemoth trying to manipulate it. But its ability to manipulate it will end the same as any other person and entity and entities and groups that have tried to manipulate it from the beginning of Bitcoin. They always get burned. It just so happens that we happen to be now at the big boss of fiat currency, and that we've got this incredible opportunity before us. Now, the fun news, the really fun news, is that everything is economics from now on. It is the economy, stupid, just as Bill Clinton and James Carville said so many years ago. And now that Bitcoin is against this incentive system that we see from the trash money and the fiat deluge of words and cliches, the way against that, of course, is winning in financial ways. And so when you see people like AOC and Mamdani and, of course, Gavin Newsom come out and they don't know how to make people money, Trump's ultimate way of winning is to fight against the psyops, yes, but also make Americans have a stake, have a windfall from his economic system to reinvigorate, not controlled decline, but actual huge economic booms. And so all of this global warming stuff, here's the California situation, right? So California, 2 refineries in California are shutting down due to California Newsom regulations making it impossible to function properly. So I guess one of the refineries in LA, some people are saying the military might just take over it. I believe that's the case. Evil Texans saying here, California is looking at $8 per gallon gasoline by the end of summer, possibly as high as $10 per gallon if anything else at all goes wrong. Phillips 76 shut down the refinery a few months ago, and now Valero is shutting down theirs. That's 17% of the total supply in California. They use proprietary blend that CARB requires, meaning they can't just import more from Texas, even if they wanted to. If Brent crude goes up to 80 US trash tokens at $68 now, or even 100, which isn't unreasonable or unheard of, it'll cost Californians even more. If they have just one unscheduled maintenance or closure of a refinery, they're in real trouble. Gavin Newsom, who's eyeballing a run for president, is going to have to contend with gas prices 3 to 4 times higher than the national average by the end of 2026. I'm afraid no amount of brainwashing can stop this kind of bleed that the Democrat sludge people are going to have as a result of this. So the whole war over economics, and here he is, of course, comes back from his meeting in in Germany, and he's sitting all proud, right? I refuse to sit back and watch the climate crisis destroy our planet. California will keep showing. These are words. They don't work. Getting people to pay $10 a gallon when back in Vermont, it's probably what, $3 right now? In fact, Newsom cares so much about the environment, having shut down their refineries for optics, California now imports most of their gasoline from the Bahamas, a distance of 6,000 nautical miles, which is just insane. So it's one of the great reasons why all of this stuff is going to change. And even on the word level, right? You know, Gavin Newsom, not exactly sending us their best. Yesterday, he tried to play the victim. So we're not in a world where you get to, as a man, politics are divided by gender now. What I'm seeing in the political sphere is high testosterone males, partnered females, mostly going Republicans. People have a husband, a boyfriend, long-term boyfriend, something like that. Those folks are almost all exclusively Republican now. The low testosterone males and the single women are Democrats. Now, there's a few exceptions, but really not many. I think it really does break down that way. Urban, male, single folks looking to get with the liberal single women are most of the constituency that you find, and then low testosterone males that are married but not going great. So here's Gavin Newsom playing victim, okay? We had Ted Cruz saying Gavin Newsom is historically illiterate. Gavin Newsom's defense was Ted Cruz calling a dyslexic person is illiterate. Illiterate is a new low, even for him. And it got It ended up getting community noted. So Tim Young, AOC can't find Venezuela on a map. Gavin Newsom doesn't know what historically illiterate means. These are your contenders for Dem nominee in 2028. So not going great, right? Meanwhile, we are in a world of action, not just optics, not just arguments, not just words, right? Trump yesterday, speaking of the environment, goes hard on the Potomac piece, right? Here he is writing a typical Trump letter. This is a massive ecological disaster unfolding in the Potomac River as a result of the gross mismanagement of local Democrat leaders, particularly Governor Wes Moore of Maryland. A sewer line breach in Maryland has caused millions of gallons of raw sewage to be dumped directly into the Potomac River, a result of incompetent local and state management of essential waste management systems. This is the same governor who cannot rebuild a bridge. It is clear local authorities cannot adequately handle this calamity. Therefore, I am directing federal authorities to immediately provide all necessary management, direction, and coordination to the project to protect the Potomac, the water supply in the capital region, and our treasured national resources in our nation's capital city, while state and local authorities. So what Trump does here is typical. He just does the strong thing. He just does the strong thing. This is the strongest thing you could do. Just take control of it, fix it, right? And in a world where action is now becoming more important than words, where actually doing things, showing, not telling, is becoming more, leading, not talking, is becoming more important. You have actual leadership on this file. Again, Trump has bad days, but he's not losing people. He might have a couple of Republicans complaining and crying about stuff, or that he's not doing enough. But that's the worst that it gets. The people who are not liking Trump are not liking him because he's not going hard enough. Not because he's doing not because his actions are pissing people off. They want him to go further. Remember, dark MAGA, right? They want dark MAGA, not light, friendly MAGA. So it's all about solving these problems. And now just look at what Trump is doing on nuclear, right? Here we see U.S. grants first nuclear fuel license in 50 years to Amazon-backed firm. So what I keep telling you you're going to see happen is Trump is going to order these people into these regions like Venezuela, like Greenland, like Canada. He's going to send all of this infrastructure. He's going to send all of these companies. He's going to send the nuclear reactors, and they're going to build. Cheap energy will persuade more people to learn about the truth about what's going on and criticize the people who managed their expensive energy and created their expensive energy because of arguments and words. It's going to create a much bigger awakening of people. And so that's the game, right? It is the chess game of awakening these folks. And it looks like energy is one of the biggest ways to do it. It is the American system. And if Trump continues this, right, many people talking about it today. Here's a great one. I'm not sure I can get the audio on this, but I will restart it so that you can get the audio for sure, because it's a good one. This is when they were loading some of these small modular nuclear reactors onto a airplane to fly them across country. Like I said, you're going to see these up in Greenland in no time.
A multi-megawatt next generation nuclear power plant is loaded in the C-17 behind us.
Energy Secretary Chris Wright touts a first-of-its-kind flight to transport nuclear reactors. He met with Undersecretary of War for Acquisition and Sustainment Michael Duffy at March Air Reserve Base in Southern California Sunday. The two highlighted the partnership between the War and Energy Department to mark the important milestone at advancing America's nuclear energy landscape.
One of President Trump's boldest proclamations was that this is America. We can build things, we can innovate, we can do things in this country. And in fact, he set out a very bold goal. This is just 12 months ago. He said by the 250th anniversary of our Declaration of Independence, meaning July 4 of this year, we're going to have multiple nuclear reactors critical.
So that's the name of the game right there. It's building all this infrastructure. It's getting this stuff to work. It's using the these pieces to persuade through just appeals to the wallet, right? Appeals to people's capacity and desire to be wealthier. and it's doing pretty great, right? Here's what we know about world nuclear power. Nuclear just hit a new record and it's climbing again. 2025 equals highest global nuclear generation ever, set to rise steadily through 2030. China driving most of the growth, US stable, EU recovering. Post 2011 dip is over. Asia is scaling reactors fast. Why it matters. AI plus data centers need base load power. Nuclear equals zero carbon plus reliable. Uranium demand strengthens structurally. This isn't nostalgia trade. Nuclear is back in the energy mix. Here's Grok answering what's happening in America on the stock market. GE Vernova, New Scale Power, Fluor, Cameco, Brookfield, Renewable Partners. That's our old Mark Carney, right? And yesterday, of course, after Rubio makes that huge speech, he goes to Hungary and signs a nuclear power deal with them too. I will share this audio because these are good clips. Oh, that was not the audio one I had. I had one rather than that. Anyway. Breaking Rubio locks in nuclear deal with Hungary. One signature, but the message is much bigger. Secretary of State Rubio has just signed a major nuclear energy agreement with Hungary, a move that signals a decisive shift in Western alliances and energy strategy. While Brussels debates regulations and climate targets, Washington is strengthening bilateral partnerships with sovereign nations focused on security, stability, and growth. Rubio is in Europe to lecture allies. There's no persuasion in words anymore anyway. He's building relationships with leaders who share a strategic worldview, energy independence, national sovereignty, and long transatlantic cooperation grounded in realism, not ideology. This is American first diplomacy in practice. Reliable energy over dependency, strategic alliances over bureaucracy, leadership over managed decline. The contrast with EU policymaking could not be clearer. Washington is moving, Brussels is talking, and the geopolitical balance inside Europe is quietly shifting. Indeed, that's what it looks like. And Hungary is just one of these examples. Here's Canadian Tristan Hopper with a really funny observation. Saying, my favorite part of US history is the sheer number of countries around the world that had some profound, nothing was the same year zero interaction with the US, and that Americans have almost completely forgotten about. Japan had two of them, and the Americans only remember the latter one because it had A-bombs. And I think that's true, because all this building, take Hungary, for example, it's not just the nuclear reactors. It looks like Trump and all are going to go right in on the election there. It looks like the EU blobsters are going to try and cheat in the Hungary elections. They're coming up in 2 months. Here's Mike Benz pointing out, indeed, that right now all eyes and cash among EU blobsters are on Hungary's election, which is 2 months away, where untold foreign millions could be pouring in to covertly fund this guy's AstroTurf campaign because the Biden admin and EU teamed up to force Hungary to repeal its FARA law. Here, this guy, dramatic turn in Hungary's election race. Orban rival Peter Magyar says that in 2024, his ex-girlfriend set a honey trap to secretly record him having sex footage. He claims Orban's camp plans to publish to ruin and blackmail him. He currently holds a big lead in the polls, but I think Trump is going to get heavily involved in this campaign. And indeed, you get this lady who's going to try and take away EU sovereignty. Here she is yesterday. I can't play her voice because she's so fucking annoying. But Ursula von der Leyen gave a speech as well in Munich, and she says that she's going to openly scrap the EU's unanimity rule, the very safeguard that protects national sovereignty. To act faster, the EU must abandon unanimity, she says. In other words, efficiency over democracy. Unanimity isn't some bureaucratic inconvenience. It's the last line of defense for smaller nations against domination by the bloc's biggest power. Strip away veto rights, and the EU stops being a union of sovereign states. It becomes a centralized power structure where Berlin and Paris call the shots and everyone else falls in line. Remove unanimity and you remove equality. At that point, the European Union ceases to be a partnership. It becomes a hierarchy. And indeed, the EU is almost done. I predict they will lose Hungary. and they will lose the EU in doing it. The EU is on its last legs, as far as I can tell. And here you got this more ladies, right? Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen says NATO wants NATO to attack Moscow with missiles. Our Ursula agrees. Ditto the witless Kaja Kallas. These three women want to start World War III. The soap opera watching masses are blissfully unaware of what is being engineered for them. Paul Weston says long periods of peace insulate us from the horrors of war. But the most insulated are these liberal women raised in privileged circumstances. Their grasp of reality seems tenuous at best. They simply cannot imagine fighting and dying in the freezing, bloodied mud surrounded by screams. And indeed, that's the difference, is that we're seeing gender lines in politics. We're seeing a big change in how folks perceive these things, how these power structures interact, how people are persuaded, who's persuaded, why they're persuaded. And you can start to measure this stuff pretty easily because, again, they're going on all these words. No man in any of their European countries is going to fight for them. It's not going to happen. They'll leave before they do it. And if they think all the people they've imported are going to fight, they got another thing coming. They're not going to do anything of the sort. So all of this is a dead end. The only answer is to start building things that are new, not fighting over these linguistic frameworks. You know, here's the Canadian one. This is really funny. This one's really funny. Okay, this one is hilarious. So Canada just hired their new negotiator for Trump and the United States for their free trade deal with the United States. And guess who Mark Carney chose? So, you know, I've told you many times that Mark Carney did most of the truckers thing. He wrote an op-ed about, obvious, you idiots, just fucking declare martial law and go after all their money. Duh. Right? Which I said at the time, you got to do it. You got it. This is too good. You got to do it. Now they've hired this broad. This is the new negotiator. Look at this fucking swamp donkey. How do you think Americans are going to react when Marty sends the elbows up final boss to negotiate? She's the one who wrote this memo that to this day the courts are using, because it's gone through every court system in Canada to say you had no right to declare martial law around the truckers. It was her memo that they used to prove there wasn't a right. She just made it up on her own. Now look at this old battle axe and her stupid face. She looks like she's been stung by 55 bees and she's been injected with Crisco into her skin. She looks like one of those people that can't afford plastic surgery and just injects fucking random, like these Russian guys that just inject random vegetable oil in their face. And so here she is. You know, I'm not trying to shame her looks. I'm just trying to say no one's going to listen to this lady. And here we see Carney just appointed Janice Charette as the USMCA top negotiator for Canada, the same Janice who wrote PM a memo to invoke the Emergencies Act against peaceful Canadians. So we got a new enemy that we love to see. You love to see it. And I guess Carney also did something else pretty funny. I want to make sure you see it. I'm not sure I have the notes, but I want to see from... Glenn Beck had it. I'm just going to make sure I can find it. There it is. So indeed, Carney also created this anti-Trump alliance abroad. Glenn Beck says, another reason I would make a bad president. Do it, Canada. Do it. Watch what happens when you cut all ties with us. Do it. Carney constructs a mega Trump trade alliance, Politico, but it's all just like shitty companies, shitty countries that have no stuff, right? So here it is. Imagine not liking your neighbor who is also your boss. You call your friends from the 10 towns over and conspire to put your boss's company out of business, not even realizing that you would be out of a job if you succeeded. This is Mark Carney. This is Canada. This is how fucking retarded these people are. The only thing they hate more than America is you. And so, guys, I'm telling you, Canada is not going to make it through the year. I mean, through the year. It's over. And so indeed, you know, seeing these weak systems and seeing these, again, low T males, right? This fits the mold. We got a low T male. Do you think that Mr. Burns has a lot of testosterone? Do you think he's out lifting weights? He does some jogging, right? He does his 20K jog. He's a big jogger. So maybe he has a bit of testosterone. I don't know. But indeed, the whole idea now of money and persuasion and systems all becomes more important when you see it that way. And you see the political breakdown between women and men, it isn't even going to stay that way. That's what we've got now, because there are still people that are being confused and led on by these linguistics. But some of the crazy stuff that's happened recently, I mean, you take Virginia, for example, with Spanberger. Now, apparently, this is true, right? I'm going to lose my mind here. Apparently, they've changed the laws around the pedal bike people in Virginia. And Harrison Smith says moderate Democrat CIA operative gets elected and immediately passes 50 laws to legalize rape. So you're going to start to lose the single woman pretty soon, because fear and insecurity and all of these aspects are more powerful than your word arguments. They're just more powerful than the Democrat tribe. So here's the actual edges of this system falling apart. And, you know, it's no woman wants to be part of this kind of stuff. And so once you realize that the ammo that is out there and the action that is out there and the actual building and the doing is going to eventually completely eclipse the arguments that are being broadcast on television and print, because it's just boomers, it's just single people, lonely people, right? That's all that we're dealing with here. You're going to start to see a shift. And again, it's not something you argue. It is something that will manifest visually. And the visual manifestations are going to be more and more obvious. I mean, this is just an example, but, you know, everyone's talking today about that, the spirit cooker. What's her name again? Abramovich, or I can't remember her name again, but she's the one who was involved in all this Epstein stuff, right? And indeed here, it's crazy because in 2020, when I was researching about her, she looked uncharacteristically, eerily young for being 7. Yet now she's in the public eye. She has developed the perfect archetypal witch physiognomy, almost like God is just and has great timing. This is the point of the movie. We're in that point. Great timing, right? Look at her. Satanic witches are doing podcasts in 2026. It's too good. It's just too good. And so the media literacy, the energy literacy, the financial literacy, the P2P network, Bitcoiners' ability to understand these narratives, to communicate these narratives, to push forward despite all of these manipulations is important, because here's another great contrast. Here's Australia, right? A lot of people laughing at their finance minister. This is their finance minister. I'll give you, it's like the Treasury Secretary. So compare Scott Bessent, right? Compare Bessent to this person. And again, this is all you need to know, because we're in a world of action. We're not in a world of words. But even her words, right? Remember, Trump has the best words. This is what they got.
It's a gross figure.
That's gross, right? What is the net figure?
I just don't have that figure in front of me.
You said there's been $114 billion in savings across your budgets. Mm-hmm. Is that net savings or gross savings?
Well, it's savings and reprioritising. So we're saving and then essentially to offset new priorities.
So you're saying that's net of spending decisions? You reduced expenditure by $114 billion?
Yeah, it's a gross figure.
That's gross, right. What is the net figure?
I don't have that available.
Is it positive or negative?
Well, I just don't have that figure in front of me.
Has the savings you've made been greater than or less than the new spending that you've initiated?
It is $114 million in savings and reprioritisations.
But if you spend every dollar that you saved, it's not a save, is it? It's just spending it on something else.
The way you just did.
When you say on.
Anyway, the point is to show you the economic illiteracy. She can't even read a balance sheet, like a balance sheet. It should be taught in high school. Gross, net. This is high school stuff. High school stuff in a just world, in a Bitcoin world. So that's why they're losing, and that's why they will continue to lose. When you look at this, here's Michael Gimmerin predicting what might come as a result of all this change. In a not too short time period, there will be an unstoppable movement to remove women from positions of political and economic authority on the basis of their gender. I mean, I'm not predicting it, but there's a lot of people talking about it more than ever before. And in younger generations could very well be. But speaking of women who do understand numbers, it gets worse for the sludge people, because you've got here Data Republican. Now, if you don't know who Data Republican is, this is a mother who's also deaf, who was activated by all of the lies and money and flows and data that was going on around the elections, around markets, who got activated and now has written a book. And here she says, hardcover pre-order links are live. I'll share more information on tonight and tomorrow's live stream. She's doing this with Joshua Lysick, of course, who did a lot of writing with Scott Adams, saying here, we only partnered with a smaller independent publisher because it allowed us to keep the book intact, no edits to dilute the message, no compromises on content. Independent publishing comes with a higher production cost, especially for hardcovers, but it also guarantees creative freedom. There's a more affordable non-signed edition available as well. And then here we get into the details. Lomez says, this is such a fantastic book. It lays out painstaking detail the entire map of the NGO complex, its origins and how it spread its tendrils over everything. Now, I bring this up here to go back again. I just gave you a measuring stick from Hunter S. Thompson's time and William Cooper's time, when he talked about the Great Awakening at 9/11 and how far people have come. Just look at what Trump has done in this war over hearts and minds this year. The first part of the year, and this I did predict accurately on the show, the first part of last year was all about taking away the capacity for the propagation of propaganda through these linguistic models. It was going after the architecture of deceit, everything that was uncovered by Mike Benz as far as corrupt media and all of these things that used experts to quote political arguments constantly. The NGO portions of the architecture of deceit, the USAID stuff and everything that we saw. From there, we got Trump to start talking about the budget, using Epstein as well. Don't forget the kayfabe with Epstein does start with the fake Elon Musk and Trump fight, and then Elon points to Epstein, and then everyone says, bring out the Epstein files. And then Trump, of course, wraps that all up with MBS sitting next to him with the Nosen Dorma, the famous song at the end of Sum of All Fears that was just at the Olympics, by the way, about winning in a test of patience over nighttime with an elaborate trap. And that, if you remember the movie, this has been a cue drop for a long time, that it would be like the end of that movie. Trump regularly plays this song at RNC conventions at the White House, and he did it during the moment he released the Epstein files to begin with, right? That's something he did. And so when you start to see the order in which Trump has organized this year, you realize you are part of this greatest show, and you are part of a master persuader working against these systems. And like I said, you might see a lot of frustration from people saying, why hasn't Trump done this or that? Remember, you can't wake up everyone overnight. You have to have them scratching at the walls for this to happen. It was laid out for us many years ago. It was very clear for over 10 years now that this is how it was going to go down. Now, we didn't know the 2020 thing would happen. We thought things would be a little quicker because of 2020. That didn't end up happening. That ended up being a major advantage, of course. But we're learning about all of this stuff, and these are the things that are going to change people's minds, like 9/11, like poverty, and someone like Data Republican. Because what this ends up doing is it makes a liar out of all, and a failure out of all of these liberal women. And that's the last thing they want to be. No one wants to be that. So the last constituency that votes Democrat are about to be betrayed by the Democrats through this poverty stuff, the controlled decline. Just like we saw with Mamdani, he ain't coming to help anybody, right? He's not coming to help anyone's affordability, and we're seeing more and more. And that's why what is being teed up by, you get the illiterate Minister of Finance in Australia. You get that illiterate Minister of Finance in Australia. Now, Bessent, like I did, right? And contrast works. Bessent himself is going to be using these skills. Let's find out why this is so glitchy. There we go. So you're going to get Bessent, who's going to start doing his audits. And that's why the audit piece is going to be one of these slow burns that Trump has with him all year long. So he's got more disclosure. He's got all the 9/11 years. He's got all the disclosure from the rest of Epstein, which he can put out exactly as he needs, right? He's got unlimited ammo with that stuff, it seems. Then he can go into all of these audits that they're using, the Minnesota stuff. And the audits are going to make liars out of anyone who defended this stuff. And eventually, the drama, like we saw in Minneapolis, right? From all accounts, Trump is more popular than ever in Minneapolis because of this. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. And so when you see what's happening here with the audits that are continuing to come, this is the kind of stuff. Because remember, a lot of these women had as the cheat code their empathy and their desire for a better world, like everyone has, right? And that was what was used in order to leverage their opinions and get them on side and get them motivated for one result. And when you get all of these new Medicaid data, the scams that are going on, 7 years, right? We get this one, Doge dumped all Medicaid data, and it shows the sole proprietor operating in a van in rural Mexico has been billed $76 million in 77 years, averaging thousands of claims a day, and a pediatrician who billed Medicaid for 830 claims a day. Nick Shirley himself out in California as well. Oh no, this is for SAVE Act stuff. Nick Shirley found 108 people registered to vote in one home. A woman wanted to show how easy it was to commit voter fraud, that she registered her 2 dogs and they voted. A woman voted in 4 times, but she was already dead, past the Save America Act right now. Between Save America and between the audits, between more disclosure, before more declassification and more action and winning on the economy, it's clear that the fiat cabal is on borrowed time, and that we are going to get, one way or the other, incredible change in America. The 2026 midterms, I continue to predict, are a complete and total circle the drain moment for the Democrats. They lose big time, and they're not going to accept it. So we'll have another set of problems after that. But again, the size of each side in this debate over hearts and minds, the side of the chess game that you heard War Clandestine describe, it looks like, and it's not just Trump, right? It's many people participating, but it looks like these powers that be are not going to be able to stop the Bessents and the Trumps and the Rubios and the American system from reemerging. That's been the goal. You get the media piece broken, right, with the NGOs, the information laundering. You go after the financial system itself. You start pumping these real economic activities. You get the ESG guys out of the game. You build super amounts of capacity. You re-engage American colonialism, not British colonialism. British colonialism is extractive and terrible. It's what everyone complains about when they hear about colonialism. American colonialism is, let's make money. Let's go here and make money. Let's go there and make money. Let's go there and build energy. Let's go there and settle it. Let's build families here. Let's build families there. That's what made America, and that is what is going to continue to make America. Of course, it's going to happen all over the continents. We're going to be doing it in Venezuela. We're going to be doing it in Cuba. We're going to be doing it in Canada. We're going to be doing it in Greenland. We're going to do it everywhere. The whole continent is getting rebuilt from this system. It will all be the United States of America in some way, shape, or form, because the American system is coming for Alaska right down to Argentina. It's going to hit everything in between. Europe is not going to be able to stay together under the thumb of this whatever cabal that exists, this empire above Epstein. They're going to get freed too, and we're going to have something like a golden age. We're there. It's happening. I understand vibes don't look like it today, but we've been in a worse spot in the past couple of years, and we'll be just fine. Just fine. Let's see what folks are saying in the comments. Indeed. All right. Let's say what people are saying. Where am I? Where am I? Hold on. USA Today. Okay, here we go. Chatelet, gas price. Okay. Personal use flamethrower. Cogent. Part of they gave us. There we go. She doesn't strike me as doing that. No, I saw that. Not so brilliant after all. She sounds like a way. Yeah. A government by perversion and blackmail. Whitney was correct. One nation under blackmail. Correct about a lot. She was correct about a lot. My point, Nolan, a pro that lost a match. Yeah. Yes, true. Smart people in service industry. Yes, some for sure. AOC, not one of them apparently. You notice the color of her hair in the right light? You can see she has it dyed light green. Look at it from the side, like a sickly greenish goo. I didn't see that. Could have been lights though, Chef Zero. People and sheepos alike spend entire lifetimes getting comfortable in their illusions. They will fight to preserve that ego through narcissistic personality disorder. It's true. Epstein is the tip of the iceberg. Again, one nation, their blackmail and lawlessness, because the churches have lost their saltiness. Even they're going to be reinvigorated. Their witness is hollow. Their testimony is void. Why? Because they not living. Congratulations on your parents' 60th anniversary. Must be quite the pair, Bitcoin Dev. Indeed. Luna versus AOC pay-per-view TV, indeed. Great marketing idea, Lance. Like back in the day with MTV Mashup. What was that called again? Wrestling show, yeah. Show versus tell. Great arguments about persuasiveness. You sound like Scott Adams. Well, we like that. We'll take that as the highest compliment a person can receive if you do this business. You don't change Bitcoin. Bitcoin changes you, indeed. Young Tommy, please tell me none of y'all enjoyed the TP USA halftime show. I did not watch any of the halftime shows, so I did not enjoy any of them. I did see enough highlights of the Bad Bunny one, and don't care. I don't care about the Bad Bunny one. The only thing that lasts with me about the Bad Bunny one is that Spanish people can't understand him. And I know Edwin has been telling me for a long time, never learn Spanish from a Puerto Rican because you won't speak Spanish in the end. I know because people did the isolation where they took the music out of the Bad Bunny thing and it was just his voice. And I played it for some Argentinians who speak, they have a very, very nice Spanish and they think highly of their Spanish, right? There, in fact, a lot of people in the Spanish Latin American world hate the Argentines because of how snobby they are about their Spanish. And they had a good time listening to the Bad Bunny Spanish. It was very funny. A lot of Roxham is Argentine, by the way, so they were totally into it. Hilarious. They had a World Wrestling promo show on MTV for a few years. Nothing like Rock. I enjoyed laughing at it. I just want to catch my fish. Drive my truck, cash my fish, hug my girl. Yeah, I don't love, I really actually dislike modern, I guess you can say, American country. I can't stand it. I've never been able to tolerate it. I like country music, but I like the Bob Dylan version or the kind of music you got from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, like old-fashioned banjo. That I love. That's my favorite kind of music. Actually, my favorite kind of music. I can listen to all of that stuff on repeat. I had the "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" soundtrack the minute it came out. It was like heavy listening for me when that movie was a hit 20 something years ago. I love that stuff, but all that new country, no, like not even a little bit. I can't even be around it, really, frankly. Like if I'm at a party and that's all they're playing, I gotta leave. Like I was the same with hip hop for most of my life too. I was the same for most music. I'm not a fan of music. I'm really not a fan. I like music when I'm flying on an airplane, and I can indulge my feelings, my nostalgia, and all that because there's nothing else to do. Then I don't mind music, but I think of music as a drug, and I consume music like a drug. If I want to get into the emotion that is conjured by music, fine, right? But I don't go seek it out casually. It doesn't play in the car if I just go for a drive for that reason. Like I'm very protective about when I listen to and don't listen to music. So that's just me, though. I don't think that works for everyone. Wow, the PSYOP is evil, beyond belief, Noah says. I'm not sure what we were talking about then, but there were a lot of evil PSYOPs. So that did have a Scott Adams vibe to it. Obama didn't make that building for literates. Because you can't read it. Even with the wall of words, you can't read it. Chef Zero says, my mom text last night was explaining how listening to Obama made her feel so comfortable, and he's such a great man. What the fuck did MSLSD do to my mother's mind? My goodness, judgment on these mockingjays. But I will say, in Obama's defense, if you read the Epstein files about Obama, now I got a lot of question about the hot dog party, so you might have to fall from space if all of that's true, or how people are worried about it. But he does sort of write Obama off as just someone interested in money. And I could see that, right? He's not that interested. Oh, by the way, Epstein also hilariously wrote off Ray Dalio. Like, what a fucking loser. Imagine the Epstein files come out and you're a boomer and it's like everyone's pissed, but then you're in it and it's just to say that you suck and you're stupid. So good. So good. You can just do things. Ray Dalio just wants to be one of the cool kids. Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness. Absolutely hideous. Who does that? Children of the Sea. That's who. Tone of chaos during Bush and Trump. Zennials. Yeah, exactly, CB Van. The Zennials for those prior to the internet gen. Looks like Hank's in the house. Let me say hi to Hank, everyone. So I'll get to some of these comments later. There's so many, I can't even get close to the ending. Waylon Jennings, Outlaw Country. We like Waylon Jennings. Outlaw Country is what you're referring to. Trust me, the Hank Williams fans were upset then too. I was in a play in college, a summer stock theater play, where it was the life of Hank Williams. And we had a really great artist who did the Hank Williams thing, and I ran the lighting board and the sound board, but I had to do like an old-timey radio voice to introduce him. I'm going to use it to introduce Hank today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome the finest San Francisco gentleman of all time. This fella came to you from San Francisco, and he's going to bring you news about the Bitcoin today. How you doing, Hank?
Well, I'm certainly not deserving of an intro quite that great, but thank you, Nolan. I appreciate it. How are you?
It was a hit play in the summer that I did it. It was a Hank Williams intro that I had to do every show. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you the finest country singer of all time.
I love it. You guys haven't been talking shop in that voice all morning, have you? Because that sounds fun.
No, I haven't. I haven't been pulling out my. I'm not sure if I have a good Southern accent, so I don't want to. I don't want to lay it on too thick.
It's passable.
It's passable,
and it's fun.
It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, what have you guys been talking about today, Nolan?
Well, a lot of talk about. I guess you can call it the architecture of deceit. It was a comment from. Mike Benzier a couple of years ago, and it really alludes to, it's not so much the Epstein stuff itself, it's what's above Epstein. So someone had written this big piece, The Empire Above Epstein, it's been the frame I've been using for Epstein from the beginning, that it's infrastructure, that things just sort of come in and out. It's like a turnstile. It's like all these subjects that come in and out, and you see him in the middle of all of this stuff. So I use that as a frame because it is interesting. He was never obviously worried about the emails getting out, right? They're just straight up talking about stuff. So I use that to also describe Hillary Clinton. She was in a BBC interview, and they asked her about her connections to Epstein and Bill, and she said, there's no connections. And then I just move on.
Oh, man.
Very funny stuff.
That is funny stuff. Well, when you said architecture of deceit, I immediately figured you were talking about one of my ex-girlfriends, but it's actually a relief to talk about the Epstein files here. So I'm feeling a lot better about that this morning. You and I are going to be chatting a little bit about Epstein this morning, too, on Roxham TV News in just a bit. We got that. We've got some of the Olympians aren't exactly doing well with Trump, and there's a little feuding there. Always entertaining. And what else? We also have the Dutch are talking about charging capital gains tax on unrealized gains, which sounds great.
They passed the law. They
already passed it. Oh, that's just excellent for the Dutch. Love it for them. So fun. But yeah, we all have to chat about. I'm gonna let you finish up on your show here, and we'll see you on ours in just a bit.
Great, Hank. See you soon, my man.
See you soon, bud. Thanks.
Peace. All right, team. I'm gonna be reading just a couple more comments here, and then that's a sad story, Hank. Yeah, well, no, we've got some good takes on what's going on over there. Face shaming Janice. This was another great episode for all of us. Thank you for sharing yourself and your thoughts. So this very day, greatly appreciated. Thank you, Jack2K. Yeah, pardon me, I can't get to all of these. Swamp Donkey CB Van running it down. Yeah, Swamp Donkey was my. I got that one from a friend of mine from Northern Ontario, like a real Northern Ontario. That's the dirtbag and a funny guy, really funny. He was out in Asia getting his black belt when I knew him, so we used to party, and he'd get on all these crazy bar fights. And he never got nervous during a fight because he'd been in so many hockey fights in Northern Ontario growing up. So he'd always crack jokes during fights, and that just had me like I couldn't get enough of that. Right, that was just to me too funny. So we had a good time, and he actually sent me a Valentine card, and it was with the lady who unfortunately was who died in Minnesota, and it was her when she was screaming in the car, and it was like a whole Valentine's card, and it says, "You drive me crazy." He's always with the inappropriate jokes. We love it. So indeed. Hank Williams and the Gibson hand in hand. Yeah, peace and prosperity. The guitar has appreciated that much. And George Strait is my top country artist. Yeah, I'm sure he's from a different time, right? And there was one more that I wanted to read. The Golden Age has barely begun. There you go. Rooster has it all mixed up. Wrong tone. Golden Age has barely begun. That's what I mean. There you go. All right, folks. So see me over on Hank's show right after this. For now, I'm going to say goodbye. You're going to see the logo come up in 1 second. After the logo, it's going to say, thanks for watching. I want to say to you, thanks for watching. Peace.